You've heard me say that rebuilding has two layers, the internal work and the external work. But here's a question I want to answer today. What does that external work actually look like? Hi, I'm Sharlene Lee. Welcome to Your New Chapter, the podcast for women who are starting over and ready to do the work of rebuilding from the inside out, stepping into who they're becoming with clarity and intention. Hi friends, welcome back. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been building a framework together. We've talked about the two-layer approach to rebuilding, internal work first, then external. We went deep on why identity is the foundation of everything. And last week, we celebrated the woman who is choosing a new chapter deliberately and with intention. Today, we're going to go deeper on that second layer, the external work, what I call holistic rebuilding. Why? Well, it's because I think one of the things that can make starting over feel so overwhelming is that the word rebuilding is so big and vague. And big and vague is quite hard to act on, so I want to make it specific. I want to make it practical, and I want to make it feel less like a mountain to climb and more like a clear path that you can navigate. With that in mind, here's what we're going to cover. We'll talk about the main areas of holistic rebuilding so that you have a really clear picture of what the work covers. We'll talk about why life simply cannot be compartmentalized and why that actually makes rebuilding more straightforward and not more complicated. We'll talk about why the external rebuild naturally wants to follow the internal work. And we'll discuss why you don't need to address everything at once. So, what does holistic rebuilding actually cover? Let me walk you through the main areas, and as I do, I just want you to notice. Notice which of these feels aligned for you right now and which ones feel like they might need some attention. One area is career and purpose. This area covers your professional life, your sense of vocation, and your deeper sense of purpose. For women starting over or reinventing themselves, the topic of purpose has a lot of emphasis because feeling a sense of fulfillment is what many are searching for, and that sense of fulfillment is linked to purpose. For some women, this means a complete career change or starting a business or doing something entirely new. And as we talked about last week, women are doing this in incredible numbers right now. For others, it means finding more alignment within what they already do. For some, it means reconnecting with a sense of purpose that feels true to who they are now. The question to sit with here is simply, does this area of my life reflect who I'm becoming? The next area is finances. Now this one, financial clarity, stability, and independence, is one of the most commonly avoided areas during a transition, and honestly, it's one of the most important. Financial clarity gives you options, and options give you freedom. You don't need to have everything figured out right now, but getting honest about where you are financially and beginning to move toward where you want to be is an essential part of rebuilding your life. Don't skip this one. This one is so important that I did so much research to find out more about women and finances. I interviewed a finance specialist, Linda Grizzly. She's an expert in women's finances and she hosts a podcast called Real Money, Real Life. We had the opportunity to sit down and she shared some of her expertise with me. So listen out for that episode, which will be coming soon, because I want us all to be financially literate and secure. The next area as part of our holistic rebuilding is relationships. So think about the connections in your life, not just romantic, but friendships, family, community. Now, when you start over or reinvent yourself, your relationships shift too. Some deepen, others no longer fit, and new ones haven't yet formed. This area is about getting intentional about the connections that sustain and support the woman you're becoming. And it's about creating space for new relationships that align with who you are now. Last year, I interviewed Antoinette Lee from the New Normal Big Life podcast, and something she shared really stuck with me. She said that when we're planning, or this is my paraphrase of what she said, when we're planning for our future lives, we should also plan for the types of relationships we will have. Who do we want to be around? What types of qualities will these people have? Choosing the relationships that we want to have isn't typically something that people are that intentional about deciding, but it completely is something that we can choose for the new chapters we're creating. So I want you to be aware of that you can choose the types of relationships you have as you rebuild holistically. The next area when we're thinking about holistic rebuilding is health and well-being. Your physical and mental health are the energy source for everything else. Friend, you simply cannot rebuild a life if you are running on empty. Tending to yourself, your body, your mind, your nervous system is not a luxury. It's actually a necessity, and it belongs really at the center of your rebuilding process, not as an afterthought and something you'll get to when everything else is sorted. If you don't put it as a priority, everything else will take a lot longer to sort, or you'll likely not be able to get everything else organized in the way that you'd like. You matter enough to be taken care of, so you need to prioritize that. Final area is faith and spirituality. Your connection to something greater than yourself. For some women, this is religious faith. For others, it's a broader sense of meaning, purpose, or spiritual practice. Whatever it looks like for you, this area is about staying connected to what grounds you, what gives you perspective when things feel uncertain, and what reminds you that you are part of something bigger than your current circumstance. So I've mentioned 5 key areas when we're thinking about holistic rebuilding. Some people list more, but these are the ones I like to focus on. Now, here's the vision I want you to hold on to as we talk about all of this. The goal of holistic rebuilding is not just to fix what seems misaligned right now as quickly as you can. Rather, over time, as you do this work, both the internal and the external, every area of your life will begin to align with your true identity. And what that creates is a life that feels balanced, congruent, and genuinely yours. It will be a life where your desires, your choices, and the life you are actually living all point in the same direction. Holistic rebuilding is not about fixing everything all at once. It's about seeing everything clearly so that nothing important gets left behind, and then, as it feels right for you, addressing which areas that you want to work on. Now let's look at why life cannot be compartmentalized. It can be so easy to think of our lives in separate boxes. So a career over here, relationships over there, finances in another corner, health somewhere else entirely. And when we think about rebuilding, we approach it in the same way. Identify the most obvious problem, fix that, and move on. Here's the thing with that. Life doesn't actually work that way. These areas are not separate from each other. They are deeply intertwined. What happens in one area can affect one or more areas. Think about it this way. When your career feels misaligned, or if you're unhappy at work, it affects your confidence, your sense of purpose, and even your energy. Your motivation levels are low. When your finances feel uncertain, it creates a kind of background anxiety that quietly affects lots of other areas of your life. Or when your relationships are draining you rather than sustaining you, it affects your capacity to show up fully anywhere else. Can you see in all of those examples that one area of life has an effect on the others? As we talked about in a previous episode, you can't just fix one area of your life in isolation and expect everything else to fall into place when we're thinking about things holistically. When one area shifts, other areas are often affected too. This is why rebuilding has to be holistic, and it has to start with your identity. Not because you have to change everything, but because you need to see everything clearly in order to know what actually needs to change. You cannot compartmentalize a life transition because all the areas of your life are interconnected. This matters because when you get clear on who you are in this new season, when you've done the work of uncovering your true identity and clarifying what you truly value, the external areas that need rebuilding become so much clearer. Decisions feel more aligned. The areas that genuinely need attention become obvious. You stop guessing and you start choosing with intention. The final piece I'd like to share with you today around all of this is the fact that you don't need to address everything at once. We've mentioned several areas, and it may seem like a laundry list of more things to do. And I genuinely don't want you to walk away from this episode feeling overwhelmed. That is not the point of this. So here's some advice from my Pilates teacher. Relax the shoulders, unclench the jaw, and just breathe. That's great advice for Pilates, but it's also great advice for life, especially if you're feeling a little overwhelmed. So thank you, Stephanie, for your words of wisdom. The reason I'm telling you just to breathe is because the great news is that you don't need to address all of these areas at once. Even though we've looked at all these areas of a holistic life, we don't need to address them all at once. And even better is that actually some of them may already be just fine. Some areas of your life may feel solid and aligned right now, and that is wonderful. Those areas don't need rebuilding, they just need maintaining. The key isn't to overhaul everything. It's to take an honest look across these areas and identify the ones that genuinely do need your attention at some point as part of your reinvention. Consider which areas may feel misaligned, which ones are creating friction, which ones have been quietly neglected. These are the areas to focus on, not everything, just the right things and at the right time. And when you approach it that way, rebuilding stops feeling like an impossible mountain and starts feeling more like a series of intentional, manageable steps forward. So let's bring this together. Today we looked at what do we even mean by holistic rebuilding, and we identified the main areas of holistic rebuilding so you have a really clear picture of what the work covers. We also looked at why life simply cannot be compartmentalized, why the external rebuild naturally wants to follow the internal work. We connected this back to the two-layer framework, internal identity work first, then the external rebuild naturally following. And we ended by talking about a really important truth, which is that you don't need to address everything at once, just the areas that genuinely need your attention. And the bonus was that in looking across all the areas of your life, you may very well find that some areas are actually fine. So remember this, friend. You don't have to rebuild everything. You just have to see everything clearly and then focus where it matters most. If these areas covered today stirred something in you, if you notice an area that needs attention and you want to get clearer on your next step and what that step actually is, the free quiz at charlenelee.com is a great place to start, and it will help you to identify where you are in your transition and what specifically needs your focus. And the link is right there in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. Take care of yourself this week, and I will see you in the next episode.